I'm going to show you how to practice smarter, not just longer, so that you can get more done in less time. I have spent thousands and thousands of hours practicing the piano, and because of that, I have a lot of tips and tricks that help me to practice more efficiently. So in this video, I'm going to be sharing the best ones with you so that you can get better at your instrument while still having time for things like eating or sleeping. Now, I'm not going to make you wait for the good stuff, but we're going to start off right now with what I consider to be the most important tip. Stop just playing through your pieces over and over and over and over again and calling that practice. While playing your pieces front to back can be helpful at times, it should never be your main go-to method of practice. The primary issue here is it's just a waste of time. Let's say you're struggling with this transition right here in For Elise. It blows my mind how many people play the whole piece front to back, miss that measure, and then just restart from the beginning, play through it again, and hope they get it the second time. It's going to take you 15 minutes just to hit that one measure 5 times. And that's a huge waste of time. But on top of that, it's just simply not a good way to learn. As your pieces get bigger and take more time to play, those troubled measures are going to get more spaced out if you have to play to the very end and then start over before you hit it again. In our For Elise example, it's going to take you at least 3 minutes to finish the piece up, start from the beginning again, and then get back to that measure. In that time, you're going to have played hundreds of notes and probably completely forgotten what you're working on in the first place. So if playing through your pieces over and over and over again is bad, what should you do instead? Well, that takes us right to our second point. You need to practice individual measures or sections that you struggle with. Are you bad at that transition? Well, work on just that measure for a few minutes. Practice the hands separately if needed, and then together. Make sure you have the correct rhythm and can play it steadily. Once you get that, try starting from the measure before. And then try playing with the measure after. The idea of practicing this way is not about practicing hours and hours and hours on one thing, but it's more about finding the real problem, identifying the core issue, and then fixing it. You can't play a measure, so you learn it. You make sure you can play into that measure, you make sure you can start there and play out of that measure. That's identifying an issue and directly solving it. Have you played a piece for a few weeks and you're still fumbling over difficult fingering for one measure? Well, don't spend your entire practice session just playing through the piece 20 times hoping you magically start doing it correctly. Instead, play just that hard passage, try to figure out a good fingering, and then do it 5 times in a row. Are you struggling with a difficult hand crossing? Try working on just that element for a bit. Now, while you're working on these individual measures or passages, if they are still too difficult, you're going to have to turn to tip number 3. Go slowly. Most people feel the need to go fast right away, but I can tell you from a lot of personal experience, practicing slowly is really the way to go. How many times have you played through a section really fast, barely survived hitting all the right notes, not quite all at the right times, and didn't even consider dynamics or musicianship? And then you felt good about that. You thought, hey, at least I hit most of the notes at the right time. No, you need to slow down and give your brain time to process all of these details. It is a huge waste of time to speed your piece up 70% of the way just to realize that your bad fingering and your lack of counting is going to limit you from going any faster than that. Or get to 100% tempo, but then have to slow it back down and clean things up and add dynamics and articulation and some sense of beauty back into your piece. Doing this not only wastes time, but it's also extremely discouraging. It's at this moment that you might completely abandon the piece, when you realize that you still have hours and hours and hours of practice ahead of you to correct all the bad habits that you picked up in the early weeks of playing the piece. So, go slow. Get all these details down before you try to speed it up. Before we do any more, I actually have an announcement for you. I've had this really fun idea kind of swirling around my head of a more interactive instructional type of video. My vision is to make like a Masterclass Series where you guys will send in clips of yourself playing piano and I'll make an instructional video based off your playing. If you'd like to send me a clip to kind of get this series going, just follow the instructions down below. A couple things I want to highlight real quick. Give me a name to call you. It doesn't have to be high quality, but do try to clear the filming area of any distractions or brands that will prevent me from using your clip. Send me an original video file. Don't send me a link to a YouTube video. And in your message, you have to include a line saying I have permission to use your clip. If you want, you can just copy the example that I put down below. The next tip here is really straightforward. Simply don't start every practice session from measure 1. In fact, as you get better at piano, you really shouldn't do that. How many times have you been able to play the intro or the first few lines of a song really well? But as you get to the middle or closer to the end, you get progressively worse and worse. You see, if you always start from the beginning gets the most practice. Honestly, a sign of a good musician is someone who can say, I only have 20 minutes to practice, I'm going to jump right to these 8 difficult measures and address those. You see, you could spend the entire 20 minutes just playing through the etude 2 or 3 times, or you could spend those precious minutes making meaningful progress in an area that you struggle with. So don't always start from the beginning, and you know what, you don't even have to play every note of a piece every day. For example, when I learned Waldstein by Beethoven, that sonata's like 25 minutes long. I simply didn't have time to just run through the sonata a couple times a day and then still have enough time to get other stuff done. So go to where you most need it, especially if you're short on time. Quick note here on long practice sessions. I'm not saying practicing for a long time is bad. Sometimes you're in a situation where you need to practice hours and hours and hours to get everything done. Just make sure you're practicing efficiently first, because if not, you're just wasting a lot of time. Speaking of long practice sessions, if you want to hear me talk about a piece that took me probably hundreds of hours to learn, check out this video right here where I introduce you to one of Chopin's hardest pieces.
I don't want to stop eating this, I'm really hungry.